So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regener. Hello, soil lovers. Welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. I'm your host, Regener. And today I'm really excited because we're going to have a guest on the show that has gone a little bit viral on TikTok. So I can say it's one of my first viral guests that have been on the podcast talking about soil. If you haven't seen the sensation, it's kind of trending on TikTok. We're joined today by Jacob from Wolki Farms. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Does this mean I'm a TikToker now?
You are. You're an influencer now. You can put that on your bio.
That was my first video and now I'm a TikToker. I don't know how I feel about
that. Well, you have been definitely getting a lot of attention and I've seen your face popping up. So share with the soil lovers a little bit about who you are, your farm, and why this video has gotten a lot of attention lately.
Sure. I live in Albury Wodonga on the border in New South Wales, Victoria, here in Southeast Australia. We're definitely on the Albury side. We're from New South Wales. So there's a big, if you don't know, there's a big rivalry here. We're definitely not from Victoria. And I got into farming in 2019. Before then, I was a retailer. I still am. I own a bicycle store and a 7-day cafe here doing breakfast, lunch. And I've always had a few little side hustles. I used to import guitars and flick them on eBay. I don't think I've ever told anyone that before. I stopped doing that because I bought the bike shop and I was worried that I wasn't doing my tax properly with the guitars and I was too young to sort of figure it out. So I just stopped. I used to import Rickenbackers, if any musos are listening. Wow. I've had a heap of side hustles, but yeah, about 2019, I took an interest in what I ate, where it came from on a personal health journey, had heaps of chronic skin issues that I dealt with for years. I used to wake up as a young child and teenager and peel my sheets off my legs, and my skin would come off. I'd be scratching myself in my sleep, and my sheets would stick to the skin because of all the blood. Wow! And I've been a mouth breathing knuckle dragger most of my life, and I fixed all of those things with diet.
Wow!
And I started becoming, and I'd been medicated up to my eyeballs for a long time and getting worse. So I fixed it with diet. And then I had my first son, Otto, who's 5.5 now. And I thought, we've got this opportunity to potentially avoid all of these environmental issues that I've had with this child. And that's not even an opportunity. That's the wrong word. We've got this responsibility to avoid these things. Once you know things, you can't unknow them. So I started messing around on my dad's 100-acre hobby farm in Australia. 100 acres is a bit of a hobby. It's a horse paddock. And that was in 2019. I started having a few egg chickens and a body doing a little bit of beef. And then it just sort of grew from there. So now I've got a regenerative farm. We employ 4 people. We own our own butchery where we process all of our own meat. And we've got this 24/7 butchery that you mentioned that's brought me to the limelight, so to speak, in the last couple of weeks. So it's open 24/7 because I know your follow-up question. Tell us more about the butchery. It's open 24/7 and there's never staff in it. It's completely staffless. So the way it works is it's essentially a big walk-in vending machine. Customers can't get access to the facility unless they have a unique PIN. And the way this is like some League of Zelda or something, like there's a journey to get your unique PIN.
I love
the way you get your unique PIN is you track me down and you come on one of my free farm tours. So everything's free in a financial sense, but nothing's free in an attention sense. So I want your attention. I want your person and your attention on my farm for one of my farm tours. And after you hear me rattle off what we do, why we do it, I show it to you, we discuss it. These go from anywhere to 3 to 6 hours, depending on who comes and where the animals are at the point and what the group decides they want to do. And if you're still interested in becoming a member of the butchery, at the end of that, we give you a unique PIN code. With that unique PIN code, you can gain access to the building whenever you like. Use an app on your smartphone to scan all the barcodes on the meat. Everything's pre-packaged. We cryovac and freeze all of our meat. And then you let yourself out. And that's been running for 2 years. We're doing about $3,500 revenue per week just through that butchery. That's not the business's revenue. That's just that self-service area. And we've got around 300 members and we've had no theft in 2 years.
That's amazing. I love the fact that you called it a walk-through vending machine. It's like, that really made me visualize what it was like. I think that's no chance of it getting stuck there either. That's right. Vending machine that gets stuck and you got to shake the whole building. And so you've been doing this for 2 years. Why do you think now all of a sudden it's caught on and people Is it word of mouth? Is it because people are looking for better quality food, changing the current logistics systems? What do you think is the driver causing people to want to get in?
Well, the memberships that we've had haven't really, it hasn't been linear. The onboarding of people, there was a massive rush in the beginning because we were a farming business that was finding its feet, and we were announced that we were doing this self-service butchery, and all of a sudden it blew up, and all of our local community onboarded really quickly. So I think the day we opened, we went from like naturally 0 members to 150, and then we've onboarded up from there pretty consistently. But it's just all this recent attention is purely because of that TikTok video, which hasn't made an enormous difference to our local sales or membership. It has made a lot of people that had pins and memberships and forgot them reach out and go, oh, I think I might like to come back again. Can you just remind me what my 4-digit pin was? So
Excellent. So that's great. I really love the fact that there's this barrier to entry. It's not open for everyone, because I think this is really, something I've been a champion on for a while, is that kind of being connected to the food source and actually knowing the farmer, seeing the way that the farming is done and aligning with values and ethics, and then making more of a conscious consumer decision to partake. Would you call this a little bit more of like are people prepaying for their stuff? Like, is there a CSA model to it, or is it all post pay once you collect?
So with the butchery, it is all the inventories in the freezers. You pick and choose whatever you like. You basically turn your phone into a barcode scanner, scan all the packages, pay on the spot, and leave. So there's probably at any one time, anywhere from 30 to 50 grams worth of produce in those freezers, and you can take her as much or as little. Like, some people just buy 1 pack of snags for that night, and then other people regularly commute through from Sydney, and they put an order in with all their friends to their friend, and their friend comes in and spends $1,000. Like, it's really all over the place. We do a monthly subscription box in the area, which is, I call it my Taste the Farm box. Ooh. Which is a minimum of 5 kilos. And that's just my pick. So that's sort of our spin on a CSA, because I just go in and I try to give them equal portions of prime cuts, secondary cuts, mince and snags. Like, it's not all just mince, right? Yeah. But I just look at my stock and what I can handle. And that's our little CSA. But we've got a bunch of different avenues people can access our produce.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, the fact that people have to come and experience it, get to know you, even the name of the box, Taste the Farm. It's all about that experience and being more connected. Have you seen because obviously you mentioned that you started this a couple of years ago, it's been through COVID. A lot of other businesses are going through struggle street and closing down. What do you think you saw that was different that kind of helped you kind of like build and ramp this up?
Well, there's a few things. I think like food's essential. So, with my other businesses, we had a really hard time through COVID with, dealing with different regulation and the border closing down, staff can't get to work, inventory not being imported because of shipping issues, all the normal stuff, not crying poor, just reality.
Yep.
But at the farm, that business, we weren't shut down, and we were given exemptions to operate as normal because we were classed as a critical industry, because we're primary producers and we're state authorized butchers. So we just mowed it on. I think a lot of people had a bit of time on their hands doing extra cooking. Like, we saw everyone brewing beer and baking bread and stuff. So everyone's sitting at home, getting on the piss, scrolling through Facebook and eating and cooking. So they're like, I'm popping up on social media and they're like, let's try some grass-fed beef.
Yeah.
With it. So we just mowed it on. Like, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky sort of guy. I don't dwell on the negatives of things going on. So, we just forged ahead. And the other thing that I would say has been probably helpful with that is younger businesses tend to grow quicker because the base you're starting from is really small because you've just started, right? So we've had an exponential couple of years.
Sounds like you got very much the entrepreneurial mindset, side hustles, different businesses, guitars, bikes, butchery. There's no maybe common link apart from you and your drive. How do you, is this something that's you kind of always tinkered with? Have you learned to become this way of thinking, or is it because of your upbringing, where it came from?
Oh, look, I think there's definitely nature and nurture there. I think about this all the time with my sons, how much of them is them and how much of them is what we've put around them. I think it's one of life's big questions. I think there's definitely a genetic predisposition, like my and environmental. So my family's all self-employed. There's 3 generations of Wolkis in Australia. My grandfather came from Germany 60 years ago. and almost been self-employed ever since. I laugh that we're unemployable. When he got here in the first 3 years he was here, he went through about 60 jobs for a range of different reasons. That's a lot of jobs in 3 years. They're like, what's that? We're averaging 3 weeks a job. Like that's something different. You can't do that today, can you?
No.
Social media would veto that.
Yeah, updating
but also
I would just tire out.
Exactly. Imagine what your LinkedIn would look like. But I'm naturally, like I said, I'm optimistic, but I'm also very curious. Mm-hmm. And I am. If I'm interested in something, I'm automatically just in the back of my head thinking about how I can make it a business, how I can make it interesting. I love reading, and the amount of times I've sat down and like, I love reading. Maybe I should just do make a little online bookstore about all the books I'm reading. It just never sort of ends. All these little things popping into my head. So I've got to settle myself down, and this is where the farm's been really fun for me because it is it's aligned with my values. I really enjoy it. Economically, it's making sense, and I just try to keep bringing myself back to center. We're chasing the farming. Come on, Jake, focus.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds like a little bit of my brain as well. Constantly always look at a shop and go, oh, that could be a cafe, or like there's always opportunity in everything that's kind of empty or for lease, or where there's someone struggling about something.
I feel it's interesting you say that. I see empty stores around the place, and I feel sorry for them, like they're lonely, and I look at them, I'm going, what could I put in that shop to make that shop not be lonely anymore?
Yeah, it's like untapped potential. It's like unlocked potential. There is, some potential sitting in that space. And that's why I loved when pop-ups kind of happened over the, few years, seeing that trend grow, because it gave people the ability to test an idea in an empty shop without this, 10-year lease kind of old school way of thinking of, leasing and businesses and so forth. And so what made you kind of think that you wanted to run a 24-hour butchery? Is this something that you planned on a whiteboard, or was it kind of like something that accidentally happened because of, your ability to see things a bit differently in that critical thinking?
Sure. Well, we don't do whiteboard planning. I've never had a 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. The things for me that would require future foresight are pretty clear in my head. I don't, this probably goes against every book you'll ever read, but I've never felt the need to write them down. I self-author pretty well like that, I think. Trying to be objective here.
No, I agree with you, mate. You're talking to the converted, because my partners and I always talk about the same thing. People are like, oh, we want to see your business plan. I'm like, it's dated the day it's written. Like,
that's right.
It could just change tomorrow. So,
they're helpful for people that don't actually know and haven't thought about it, because it's forcing you to think and articulate, right? But we purchased the butchery. Like my wife and I bought the building 2 years into our farming journey, 2021, because it became very evident that the local butchers we're not going to be able to help us take our business to the next level. And that's not a critique. Like, I'm not trying to throw any shade at the local butchers, but the way the supply chain works is we grow the animal, it goes off to an abattoir to be slaughtered, it gets delivered back to a certified boning room, which is butcheries, and then they cut it, pack it, and give it to us, and we pay them for it. But these butchers are at capacity, dealing with their own businesses, managing their own display cabinets, dealing with their own clients, and we're second fiddle to them. Wow. And so we were already at capacity, stressing out the local butchers trying to service our needs. So we purchased this butchery so that we could have our own boning room and process our own animals with our own labor, with our own butchers, which I've got 2 of now. And the retail space was just sitting there dormant. And I had absolutely no intentions of unlocking the retail space. I had a lot on my plate at the time. COVID was going on. We just had our second child. We just bought the butchery. The farm was growing heaps, all this sort of stuff. And then a local friend of mine who has a smokehouse, I was chatting to him in December, and he said, so when you're opening up that retail space? I said, oh, never. It's not what we're interested in. I'll probably just convert it to like another cool room or something. And he goes, you'll have it open in March. And I thought, you dog. Like, I can't believe you just said that to me. You've just destroyed the next 3 months of my life. And it was this challenge. He knew he did it. He dangled this deadline in front of me. So first I had to figure out how to make it viable. And that was no staff. That was pretty evident to me. And then I just gamed it. I just turned it into a self-access vending machine, and I had it open 1st of April. So I missed out on a day.
Damn, he won. No, that's awesome. I think we're all winning from that little deadline and challenge. The whole, that's such an interesting way to think about it as well. It's like, you knew straight away that you'd wanted to have no staff. There's so many people. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but that might come across wrong. But I ran my numbers on the back of an envelope. I'm a big believer in envelope balance sheets and envelope profit and losses and budgeting, because just keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
And just based on the volume, the surplus volume that I was producing, because everything I was producing was already being sold elsewhere. And I couldn't just take all my sales channels and redirect them through the front of my butchery, and my surplus volume, it wouldn't even cover the revenue of a wage, let alone have the profit to cover a wage. So I just knew that there was no potential to have a staff member there. So it's not like I didn't want a person. I just knew it would never work with a person because it'd go broke straight away.
Yeah, no, I think, what my brain was showing me when you were talking about that is that you might not have people on the front end because that kind of self-care, take your own, pay your own at the point of service enables you to then have more staff in the back end to deliver that. So I think the staff maybe are there. They're just at a different point. And I think so many times businesses focus on the wrong part of the equation. Instead of building a strong foundation and how to get the product there with good quality, they're focused on the front end, which is what sends them backwards and broke and struggling and behind the eight ball and stressed and exhausted. So I think having that foresight of flipping that, putting more in the back end to, deliver throughput, but then have the customers take care of themselves.
100%. And you've got to know what your values are and what you want to be doing. Like in my farming business, I could not give two rats about customer experience. I just don't care. Customer service and in a nice, frivolly customer shopping experience is so low on my radar that I don't even spend any time thinking about it. What I care about is the way we look after our animals, the way we look after our environment, the way we look after our staff, and getting this food to people. And that's why people buy it. They're not buying it because they're getting cuddles and nice smiles at the checkout. They're buying it because of the way that we're stewarding animals and environment. So I've just got tunnel vision on that. And when I say that, I know people go, "Oh, he doesn't care about his customers and doesn't want them to have a nice experience." And that's not what they're coming to me for. I do care about my customers and their wants because our wants are aligned: welfare, environment, right? So let's get people out of the shops sitting at a till and let's get them back onto the land, which is what we're saying we're doing.
Yeah, man, I've been in so many shops lately where I feel like the staff are causing the business to go backwards. The care factor, the customer service, it's not there anymore. Post-COVID, whatever it is, staff shortages, value changes, it's definitely a different world that we live in there. And I'm constantly one of those people that sit in a restaurant or sit in a place and going, there are so many inefficiencies here and no one cares to fix it, and what's the point of having all these staff there working, kind of going backwards when they're not delivering and not going that extra mile, and those values are just not there anymore. So, and I think, some people are a bit concerned about, what jobs are humans going to do if there's self-checkout and AI taking over things and things like that. What are your thoughts about this whole kind of self-checkout movement and, DIYing yourself? Do you see that this creates more opportunity, more butchers popping up that are walk-in vending machines?
Well, I don't have the answers about what AI is going to do to jobs. Obviously, that's a point of contention in, current conversation. But if you look back through history, every innovation we've had that has wiped out jobs has ended up giving us more.
I agree. Yep.
Imagine we've just killed the horse and cart industry with cars.
Yeah.
I wonder, how many people do we employ now because of cars? So, and then, what are we going to do? We're going to have self-driving trucks soon. So we lose all the truckies, which is a lot of people. But think about all the jobs behind these. You still got to load them. You still got to unload them, that they're still going to need repairs and servicing. And I actually think that just the way that the water flows of the jobs that we're getting rid of, they're probably not the jobs that are higher calling jobs that people really want to be doing. Anyway, obviously, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone in particular, but let's take my history and my experience. I'm essentially a shop clerk the last 15 years. I'm a retailer. It's not this altruistic, highly passionate, I can't wait to get to the shop today and I'm going to scan those books so well when I sell them. You enjoy it, you enjoy your customers, you enjoy the interaction, but it's not this amazing higher calling for most people. So if we can free them up and automate those jobs so that society doesn't need them so much and actually put people in these more productive, high calling, creative, innovative jobs. I personally think good people that have a lot to offer will find good jobs. They'll land on their feet.
Yeah, absolutely. Or a creative side of them that they've not been able to tap into because they're so exhausted earning an income will open up and create this whole new passion for music or dance or art because, that they're no longer fatigued from working and so forth. So I agree with that. I want to dig a little bit deeper into the farm values that you've mentioned. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. So stick with us. Hello, soil lovers. I hope you're enjoying today's guest and this podcast. But I wanted to just let you know that when you get excited about soil, just as you're hearing about our guests, then you will want to check out the Soil Learning Centre. The Soil Learning Centre is a hub that we put together and digitalized all the content over the years that were originally on DVD into this online learning experience. So if any of our guests or any of the topics that we speak about during the podcast whet your appetite and you want to get your hands dirtier and dig deeper and get educated around different things around soil, whether it be biodynamics, permaculture, whether it be using a microscope, or whether it just be hanging out with other like-minded educators, mentors, and facilitators, then the Soil Learning Centre is a place for you to hang out and dig deeper. That's the soillearningcentre.com. We have lots of different programs, courses, and even a membership. So if you want to belong to a community of other soil lovers, then that's the place to hang out. Well, until we meet again, enjoy the rest of this podcast. Back to the program. Welcome back, soil lovers. You're hanging out with Regener and Jacob from Wolki Farms. We've been talking about his 24-hour butcher that runs on autopilot, not autopilot because someone has to stock the shelves, but you walk in and you get to buy your produce. It's recently gone a little bit famous on TikTok. But we've been talking about the values of the farm and how that all kind of aligns. So how important are values to you, and what are some of the farm values that you kind of live by?
Well, look, values are our guiding principle. I've never had mission statements before in my other businesses because they've been really contrived. Like I like to say, think about the Fortune 500 companies and take out every word in their mission statement that identifies their industry, that unique marker, and then all 500 mission statements are going to be the same. Like, they're all junk. And that's them trying to pretend they've got values when they don't really have values. I'd much rather if Coca-Cola's mission statement was provide dividends for shareholders. It's like, we know what you're about.
Yeah.
Done. That's okay. You can be what you are. So, but on the farm, as a contrast to my other businesses that I was never able to articulate what our mission statement was beyond, I guess, make money and have good relationship with customers that makes us feel nice, whatever it might be. Just through laboring on the farm with my farm hands and working with them and troubleshooting sick animals and running out of grass and how we're going to manage this landscape and all these things, we've naturally and organically come up with our 5 pillars of production that you referenced earlier. So our values are these 5 pillars, and I talk about them being a flywheel because if you get them right, they keep feeding into each other and accelerating progress and fertility and health. So the first one's animal welfare, and animal welfare for me has to be contextual to the animal. So you'll get people that raise factory farm pigs, or they have caged eggs or feedlots, and they'll argue that they have the science and the data to back up that their welfare outcomes are better than pasture-based farmers. Because that's because they're relying on closed ecosystems where other wild animals can't bring in pathogens, and they're relying on pharmaceutical imports and intensive management. But the reality is that a good weaning percentage of piglets born in a farrowing shed, because you're relying on these pigs being so immobilized that they can't even lay down, isn't a high welfare outcome. Like anyone who can think knows this. The pig needs to be able to express being a pig. It needs to be outside. It needs to wallow. It needs to eat a pig's diet. So number one for us, when we say animal welfare, it's not just outcome based. It's what's the context for that animal's natural expression. And then number two is environmental. These get quicker, I promise. Number two is environmental stewardship. So we want to have a little bit of backbone when we look after our environment, and we don't want to be mining our farm and mining our soil. We want to be increasing the commons. But the reality is that if you're looking after your farm animals in the context of what they are, it's naturally an environmentally enhancing practice because animals are the environment. They're not separate. There's propaganda being peddled around the world that animals and people, as an extension, are bad for the environment is absolute nonsense, and it drives me up the wall. Poor management of animals is bad for the environment, but it's not the animals that like cows aren't inherently bad for the environment. It's the feedlot, right? So if you look after animals in their context, the environment's automatically thumbs up. Let's go for it. Third pillar is we want to create healing food. So we believe that food has the power to heal and create vigorous health in people and communities. Number 4 is build community. farm tours, getting connected to the person who used to be allergic to eggs and now selling them eggs, and then having a personal relationship because they're so thankful for what we've done for them. All that's building community. We love it. Step 5 is being profitable, making money. We can't do the job we're doing unless we turn a profit at the end of the year, and we can't accelerate our scale and our reach and our volume and production unless we make money. So then once step 5's ticked, then we're back into step 1, enhance the program, more animal welfare. So that's our flywheel of production. And it just helps the staff when they're going around the farm, be a reference. So there's something that needs to be addressed. I don't need to call Jake. I know the value hierarchy. So first thing I need to do is make sure the animal's okay. And then I need to make sure that the environment's okay. And everything else will sort of be default off that.
Yeah, I love that. It's almost like a filter for decision-making, question, problem solving, follow this flywheel of steps and these pillars, and you can self-regulate, self-heal, problem solve, which I think is super important. These are really amazing 5 pillars. And I think as you articulating them, it really just, in my mind was painting this picture of like what this farm looks like. And, the fact that there's these values of animal welfare and the environment. Healing food, I think, is a really interesting concept. Food as medicine. We've kind of really lost that, the herbal medicine movement. Our grandparents used to be like, you got this, have some garlic. You got this, put some turmeric. There's always a natural lean to, and now it's all like pills and tablets and supplements and synthetic stuff. So can you go a little bit deeper into, and because obviously you've had firsthand experience of like food reversing some of your skin issues and so forth, and how important, can you just talk to the importance of food and healing?
Well, you can imagine that all these 5 pillars, I get pushback from someone on. The feedlotters think that my welfare argument's nonsense. The croppers think that my environmental argument's nonsense. Yada yada yada. The communist farmers don't like my making money, whatever it might be. But the healing food one is I can see a lot of people glaze over, because if you're claiming to heal, are you a prophet? Are you anti, the word healing almost comes across like anti-science, because we treat in our community, don't we? We treat and we manage. When someone goes in for chemo, we never say we're healing them of cancer. We're treating them for cancer.
Yeah.
I don't have a single shred of empirical data saying that our food heals people. So if you're looking for hard science, I don't have it. But data is the plural of anecdote. And what I do have is countless interactions with people daily, just about, that have found our produce and implemented it in their diet and had immediate results. And I'll give you a few examples. So I never knew this, but there's people out there that are allergic to eggs, can't eat eggs. They get hives. Everyone reacts in different ways. So I'm thinking about a particular lady that started shopping with me. Eggs gave her hives, started eating our eggs, no skin rash. So all of a sudden it's healed that intolerance in her system. Lots of people, my wife and I included, struggle digesting factory farm pork. And this isn't something that's really spoken about, but when you do engage with people, they go, yeah, that's right. When I get that pork belly, normally I feel bogged down. I've got indigestion. I've got diarrhea later on. My wife and I, when we got married, my wife's an amazing cook. And I'm like, I just need 1 or 2 meals up my sleeve so that when she starts having kids, I can just do dinner and just not just do Vegemite on toast, right? I can do something a bit nicer. So I started doing pork bellies. And after a few months, I did 1 a week practicing. I was watching Gordon Ramsay. I was watching Jamie Oliver, trying to make my own little concoction up. And after a while, my wife's like, look, I really appreciate all the effort you're putting in, but can you please pick something else? Because every time we eat pork, I'm sick, and I know you're sick, but we keep doing it. Then I raise my own pigs. No issues anymore. And I get this feedback all the time. People that have issues with all these different food groups, and they come to our food, which has no chemicals in it, and the animals are real animals and real landscapes, and they feel greater result. And if this is a little bit confronting for listeners, and I'm sure your audience is all on board with this sort of stuff, but just if you're ever talking to somebody about this, say if you're training for a triathlon, you're not eating Mars bars, you're not drinking Coca-Cola, you're not consuming Smith's chips. Is that 3 lawsuits now for defamation? Yeah. But you're not eating junk food, right? You're by default, you're eating whole food. So we know that what we consume changes the way we feel. Like we know if you have a massive palmy and 2 pints of beer at lunchtime, you're on the couch sleeping it off, watching telly. You can't go back to work. You're shagged. You've been railroaded. Your body can't digest it. But if you go and you have a nice light salad or you have a good quality steak or something, you can get back to work. You don't even feel like you've eaten. You're not bogged down. You're energized, ready to go. So we know what we put in our body changes the way we feel. So it isn't a big stretch. It's an extension of this is you are what you eats.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah. Boom, boom. I love that. I talk about this all the time, and I want to make it more mainstream of people understanding that you are what you eats, or what you ate, and so that, following that bouncing ball all the way down back to the soil and the microbes, and understanding that they are playing a big part in keeping that plant or the grass that the cow and the pigs eat, that is all passed on. And you're right, like maybe, it's the better quality food that is healing because it doesn't have all these chemicals and these things that are inflaming us and putting our bodies in this constant state of stress and, asking for help. And yeah, I know this is a very, touchy topic, and a lot of the guests that come onto the show, we always talk about the fact that, the traditional medical industry is basically about what's the symptoms, here's the pill, and that's now causing us something else, here's another pill. No one's ever going down to the root cause of, maybe it's eggs. And it's not eggs, it's the eggs that have got low protein and high chemical. So it's not the egg's fault, it's the way that it was raised and created.
And everything's so nuanced. Like if you look into the data of kids with nut allergies, you can't even send your child to daycare or school anymore with nuts in their bag. They're nut-free zones because so many kids are allergic to it. And the data now is saying that the reason these kids are having nut allergies is because they're not being exposed to nuts at a young age because the parents are worried about them having allergies.
Yeah,
it's this cyclical, and it's sad, and there's nuance about it, right? Like there's so many aspects of whether the food is coated in glyphosate or whether the soil was devoid of nutrition or whether we're using heirloom seeds and how we're milling the wheat and what the child's exposure was. There's a lot of variables. This is very nuanced stuff, but I think a lot of people get bogged down in the weeds. We need to get back to first principles. Poisons are poison. So don't be shocked when the food you're eating that was treated with poison makes you feel like dirt. Poison's poison.
I always love when Charlie Arnott says maybe we should just label the poisons on the packaging, not natural or sugar-free or, No,
that's right. Well, we shouldn't have a small organic section for fruit and vegetables in our supermarkets. There should be fruit and vegetables and then chemically supported fruit and vegetables. Like, why is the organic stuff given the special name? That is what that stuff actually is and has always been, right?
Yeah. I agree. And I think a lot of the soil lovers listening would be nodding their head in agreement with you as well. We've spoken also a little bit about the quality of soil, and you made a really interesting point that I talk about a lot as well, which is this whole idea of mining the farm and mining the soil. Can you speak a little bit more of like why you refer to it as mining? Like there's farmers out there mining the soil. What does that mean to you?
Well, if your system's extractive, you're mining, aren't you? Like the soil that you're holding, if you put a pile in your hand, like the resources in that, although they're vast, they are finite. Like you can add to them through ruminant digestion or like all these other inputs, but once you hold it and if you tie it up, it's finite. And if you're extracting that every year and giving it synthetic inputs to extract more of it and unlock it, you're mining it. You're depleting the commons, the shared resource that's in that soil. So I look at those extractive practices as mining. It just seems to be common sense what it is. Taking, and then never giving back from a natural point of view. And if you're giving back, it's some synthetic lab research altered, GM thing that we're throwing on it. And normally it has skull and bones on the barrels as well. That's one of the things that people always say is like, why are we putting skull and bone stuff on food that we eat? And why are the farmers that are applying it in like full HAZChem suits? How can this be a system that we've allowed to be okay and not ask better questions, through the aisles and so forth. So protecting the soil, what are some of the things that you do on your farm and that other farmers and soil lovers that are listening can do from a starting point? Like, what are some of the practices that you're following? Well, we do holistic planned grazing. So on our farm, we've got beef, pork, chicken, lamb, eggs. I find it easier to rattle off the production, not the actual animal. Cows, sheep, pigs, chickens. But, so we do holistic plan grazing. So we're always aiming to let our pastures recover as best we can before the animals come back. And that's mimicking natural migratory patterns that animals have. But within that, you've got to remember that each animal operates differently. We talked about welfare being contextual. So we move our herbivores like our sheep and cattle daily into new pastures, and so they're not there too long. And that being that's a good example of animal specific welfare and environmental stewardship and healing foods all being intertwined, because not only are the animals moving every day, which helps the environment get a longer recovery period and a break, but it also keeps the animals away from their feces and parasites. So we look after the environment, you look after the animal, they're intertwined. But then other animals are different, like pigs normally come to an area, set up a big wallow with their group, tear up the place, and they might camp there for a couple of weeks while they're smashing all the local resources, and then they'll move on. So we move our pigs a bit slower, and we give them time to set up their little houses and their wallows and everything that they do. But, some of the things that we do is like real basic things that everyone on the property knows is we're always maintaining ground cover. We never want to graze down to dirt. And if the pig's really nuke a piece of pasture, we use a few cover crops. Normally we spread out like a multi-species cover crop the day before we move them to give them a bit of a chance to stomp it in. And then if they really nuke something and it's a brittle time in the year, like a hard, hot time in summer, pardon me, we'll put down a little bit of a ground cover. We'll put some junk straw out or something just to help it get going by.
Yeah, I love that. They're all integrated. And I love the fact that you're painting this picture that a pig gets to be a pig, a cow gets to be a cow, sheep gets to be a sheep, chicken gets to be a chicken. We've I think some people don't even know what a pig should naturally do.
We've got laws in Australia outlawing pigs from expressing their true nature, because pigs are omnivores and they can consume, and they do consume in the wild, animal products. They'll eat a rotten carcass and they'll eat poo from another animal on the ground. And we've got laws in Australia that outlaw swill feeding. So swill is food that is not only animal product, but it's been in contact with animal products. So in my kitchen, if I chop up a piece of bacon and then on the same chopping board, without cleaning it, I chop up cabbage, it's illegal to feed that cabbage to a pig. So I'm not necessarily picking a bone with that law. Like, that law's there for reasons, and that's not a battle I'm too interested in fighting right now. But it just paints a picture that we're sort of so disconnected from natural systems, and we're so worried about reducing liability and little issues that we've got laws not allowing animals to do what they have always done.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Soon we'll have a law saying cows can't burp. Put a muzzle on it and catch it.
Well, they're trying to do that it can't poo, because like they were saying that spreading compost on your property would be a toxic waste, quote unquote, and people were going, well, what, do you want us to put nappies on cows? Like, what? Where are we going to draw the line of common sense and craziness, I get people asking to come and take my cow manure because they want it for their veggie garden. And I say, no, it's like the most jealously guarded thing on my farm. I'm not letting that go anywhere. No,
except one exception. A local TAFE, a local university was growing in their classroom a new species of dung beetle, and they asked for my poo, and I and I said, well, why do you need my poo? And they said, well, we can't find anyone else that doesn't drench their animals, and the drench kills the dung beetle. So I said, okay, I conceded. It's for a good cause, so you can have some cow poo. So they came out with their plastic bags and shovels and took some poop.
Yeah, no, that's great that, some extra research is being done on these more positive signs, because I think, a lot of the DPI stocking rates, it's all based on, very bad data and, the available grass. It's like, well, just another kettle of worms of like, all these people trying to comply with the regulations, but like that is such old school data, and everyone who's growing in a more holistic, regenerative way is seeing that they can double their stocking rates and have thriving animals with no drenching and chemical-based farming. And yet the science, the DPI data says that you shouldn't be doing it that way,
Well, they're trying to systemize things that can't be systemized. Like you can't tell someone how many cows that they should have on their farm, because like, what do the cows weigh? Are they pregnant? Are they lactating? What season is it? What's the environment doing in that season? Are we in drought? Is it flooding? Are they putting down cover crops? Are they fertilizing those cover crops? Like, there's so many variables that you can't just say it's 1 cow a hectare, because it just makes no sense. What's the context of what's going on? Which is why, like we spoke about before, holistic management is so important, because it trains people to have a decision-making context and thought program to look at the data, look at their situation, and then make decisions. They've got the tools to make decisions that benefit the commons.
Yes. And I've also done the holistic grazing management course, and I completely understand. And a lot of people think that it's just a way of managing cattle on a land, and it's nothing to do that really. It's about what you said. It's a decision framework. It's about having this lens to make the decisions on your farm, keep adding value and making the systems better. You've also mentioned this word commons a lot. And it's not a word that I hear a lot in the common vocabulary. What does the commons mean to you, and why do you keep referring to it?
I got onto the concept of the commons listening to Joel Salatin, and I love it. I talk about it all the time, and I've sort of expanded. I guess I'm pirating language and sort of forcing it into my own niche a little bit. But the commons, when Joel talks about it, it's the water, because it's a shared resource. It's a common resource. So it might flow through your farm, or it might be under your farm through a bore, but it's a shared resource. And if you're polluting it, you're polluting the commons. Or if you're improving it, you're improving the commons. So water's a common, air quality is a common, but I would expand that and say soil health is a common, or at least we should refer to it as a common. Like, no one has the right to come onto my land and take my soil fertility, but if I'm improving that, there's externalized shared common outputs from that. So it's a common to me. Another thing is, for me, that's a common is community health, and that can be physical health, but it can also be the health of all of our relationships together, because it's something that has a lot of impact for all of us. So for us, when we're making decisions, we're trying to always wealth, personal finance, and the health of the economy. That's a commons for me. So they're all the different things I'm thinking about when I'm talking about the commons.
I love that whole ability to zoom out and see the many parts that make up the whole, the whole concept of it doesn't matter if I'm putting chemicals on my property, it's not affecting anyone else. And it's well, it is, because you've got drift, you've got, leaching into the waterways, and fish are dying, the coral reef's dying, and no one is taking responsibility for that, because they think what they're doing on their land that they own, they can do whatever they want, and no one can tell them, to do differently.
Well, even to expand on that a little bit, and to give a potential thought exercise to listeners that they mightn't have contemplated before. I've been talking about this a lot lately, but I've read a book called Deep Nutrition by Dr. Catherine Shanahan, and she talks about epigenetics. Are you familiar with epigenetics? A little bit, but go deeper into it. Yeah. Just real top level, because I don't have a science background, and I'm muddling my words here big time. But we all know that we've got genetic information in us, our DNA. Epigenetics is the science of that changing based on your diet and input, basically. So we've now proven and can observe that if your diet is, if you're eating heaps of seed oils and refined sugars and carbohydrates, and maybe you're vegan or whatever it is, that this is changing the available genetic information to be expressed. So it doesn't disappear from your genome. It's not like it's permanently lost this information, but it's losing energies that it needs, and it starts shutting down segments to keep going with the limited information. Why I find that interesting, and why to me that could be argued to be part of the commons, and it is in my world, is because if you're doing these things to your own genome before you're breeding, that's what you're giving to your children as their starting point. So that for me, like, I've had a pretty unhealthy past and pretty unhealthy inputs, what I chose to eat in the beginning because I didn't know better. And then a little bit later when I knew better because I didn't care. But if somebody would have told me and sat me down when I was 19 and said, all this KFC you're eating and all these donuts you're eating and all these frozen Cokes you're drinking are actually screwing up your genetics and the health that you are when you conceive your first son is going to affect his starting point, I would have I would have had the willpower because I had the knowledge to make a lot better decisions a lot more often. And this is important for people. It's to give people a visual reference of like this. It's as if getting a tattoo on your arm. So say you want to go get like a big dragon sleeve on your arm, but then the tattoos that you have on your body are what your child's born with. So what tattoos do you want now? Like, it's a silly comparison, but this is the reality of what we can express. So we look at how many kids are screwed up with their health now, and you see them all around the place. You know, their teeth are all crooked, their eyes are sunken in, they've got these big black rings, their pale skin, full of pimples. Like, what are pimples? I had awful acne. I knew it was from the food I was eating. But these kids are starting with such a disadvantaged start because of how hard their parents have flogged themselves because of all these highly processed junk foods available. And it's a real shame. And I think that's a common resource, our genetic information as a species. Is that a common resource? And I think we need to start to, talk about this a bit more and get a bit more real about it. We have a duty of care to our progeny to give them the best start. No one,
many people I meet do not think about what we do today is taken from the future. The way that we are treating soils, the way we are abusing food, the way that we do everything, it is taking. Like, it's not a, dopamine hit for today. It's a dopamine depletion or a life existence depletion in the future. Like, we really do need to zoom out and look at the dots that are joining and the many parts of the whole, because I agree. Like, I think, that whole, just like what's kind of deemed normal these days, like, there's fast food joints all over the place, so it has to be normal, has to be okay. That misconception of like, well, if it was bad, it would be banned. There's chemicals all around the world that are banned in other countries and they're fine in our country or in other countries. It's like, it doesn't, legislation's never going to be the answer. So many people sit there and say, I'll stop using this when they ban it. But it's like all the data showing that is bad already. So why don't you be part of the change you want to see? But people just don't get motivated that way. I don't know why.
These paradigms and these conversations are really onerous to have, because like I was explaining earlier about the big intensive industries are the ones that have all the data because they need it. They need the help. They need the studies because their systems are like so against nature. And you can get really bogged down talking about compliance and regulation and data. This might sound like a bit of an intellectual hack, and not a hack as in gaming it, but a hack as in cop out. But I really find a lot of that stuff like quite boring and onerous. Zoom out, like get on Google Earth and instead of looking at the roof of your house, zoom out. Chemicals aren't natural. Like, they're just not natural. So even an argument. A paper arguing for the safety or efficacy for them is just like so against nature from the get-go for me. Like, they're not found in nature. So why are we trying to argue that they're natural or that they can be healthy? Like, I don't know. I think just like basic principles, first principles, that's what I make my decisions off.
Yeah. And the fact that, so many of these studies as well, the hypothesis is set at the start. So it's like all the data that doesn't match this hypothesis gets omitted, sitting in the trash can. It's like, hang on, there's a whole nother research sitting there in the research that proves probably the opposite. Who pays them? Yeah. The pet shop wants you to feed your dog these puppy kibbles, and the first 4 out of the first 5 ingredients are all grains. The stuff's cooked at 300 degrees to make it shelf stable. And you've got this dog that, I understand dogs are omnivores, but they're essentially carnivores. Like, they eat a couple blueberries and a piece of grass. They're essentially meat eaters. I think we're splitting hairs there, and we're trying to feed them a diet that's 60, 70% grain. But then you got vets pushing this stuff, and you look at how much animal nutrition they do at school, and it's hardly anything. And it's sponsored by kibble producers. I know. Crazy. I don't know. I think you and I have gone down similar rabbit holes, and to me, this just makes a lot of common sense. And hopefully, to the soil lovers listening, they can pique their interest and go do their own research and go down these rabbit holes. And there is so much information on YouTube, and other things, and you can really make these decisions for yourself when you follow what's been said and who's paying for it to be said, and understanding how the whole system works. I think something incredibly liberating is, don't take my word for it. Don't trust the study and don't trust the guru. Experiment on yourself. Yeah. Like, if we're talking about food and the provenance of food and the organicness of food, don't take anyone's word for it. Like, keep a journal, feed yourself different diets,
measure your own weight, your own, how you feel in your head, and no one can take that away from you and come up with your own answers.
I think our diet and the way that we eat is just as unique as our fingerprint, like it is based on, maybe you can eat a lot of grains and someone else can't. And, maybe someone's high carb and someone else is high fat, and we are functioning very differently, human beings. But yet we have this food pyramid that says, here's a one size fits all and we all eat like this, period, and many decades later, we've got we're worse off, and we think that study helped us go in the right direction. Just feels
well. That was provably fraud.
Yeah,
that food pyramid. Like I was taught that in school. That was still taught at school, and you can spend a few minutes on the internet and figure out that whole thing was bribed into existence, and that's a paradigm buster when you realize how they achieved that.
Yep. And it's all public common knowledge. It's not any hidden stuff. Well, they probably tried to hide it initially, but it's all there. And even like a lot of the stuff that's happening and spoken about now with like, let's eat crickets and let's reduce, cows from farting. Like, it just sounds crazy. Like, I honestly believe that if we keep going down that path, we're going to be worse off, and we will bring ourselves to extinction.
It's just, like I said, it's just arguing against first principles. Like this whole thing about the animal diet that I was mentioning before, the dogs eating kibbles. There's all these datas and everything, all these studies about how good the kibble is because it's a balanced diet. But for me, you just like look at wild dogs and look what they eat.
Yeah.
We're just making it so complicated. Get back to first principles. Like try think really clearly, try think really big picture.
I sat with a regenerative farmer once, and I've spoken about him many times, but he said a good day is when I move the cattle and then sit there for 4 hours and watch what they do, just observation.
Absolutely.
What are they eating first? And, and that doesn't fit in the hustle culture, sitting under a tree. And you think of caretakers of the land in the past, that's what they did. They sat under a tree, and they watched the animals, and they're like, it's time to move paddocks, shepherd them over to the next paddock.
That's right.
And now we've kind of lost that literacy of the land and that observation. And I really hope that more of these conversations get people to slow down and think about what they can do more to observe their land, and, principle number one of permaculture as well.
Yep. Be stewards, observe and react.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacob, are you ready to become the voice of the soils?
Oh, I think we can do it.
Excellent. Well, you are now the soil. You've embodied its power, its energy, and you are its mouthpiece. What would you like to say to us on the planet?
My needs are the same as yours. Shelter, food, quality food, clean water, and don't walk all over me.
Love it. Almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs for the soil.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Like it's infinitely complex and so simple and elegant.
Yes, very well said. I agree. If you slow down and learn about it, and see how it functions and works, and its power, I think the soil has so much power to give, and we just, stomp on it and treat it like dirt,
Yep. We know, we'll never know all the different bacteria, all the different fungi, minerals and vitamins and potential. But we do know how to kill it, and we do know how to improve it and build it. And they're not easy, but it is simple, I guess. So it's, as daunting as that might be, it's actually liberating and exciting at the same time. When you understand, when your paradigm blows off and you understand animals are the solution, that's exciting.
I know. I have that moment as well where I was like, what? The problem that everyone is saying is the solution? It is mind-blowing. And, I've had conversations with lots of different people who do have different viewpoints, but I'm often saying to people now, the amount of biodiversity loss and ecosystem destruction that happens from these massive monocultures to create soy-based food product is, if people really understood what destruction was happening there, they would be mortified, Yep. And, they're just not seeing the coin from the other side, and they're just sitting very tight with their views. And, and even in holistic management, they refer to animals as tools. And a lot of people have an issue with that, that we shouldn't be utilizing animals as this kind of tool mythology. And it's like, well, no, that's, if it's helping solve a massive problem, then let's get as many of them on the land to do it as quickly as possible, and turn the ship around.
And it's not like the animals that we're managing holistically are feeling abused. Like they love it. Like if you're looking after your animals properly, they're expressing their nature. Like it's what they do. You know, a cow, even a cow that are like one of my animals, for instance, that I raise for slaughter, they might live for 20 months and they've got one bad day. You know, every day, like sometimes it might be raining and you might think, geez, they're probably not too happy out there in the rain. It might be a bit cold. I think we probably even underestimate their potential to deal with these environmental happenings. But their life is actually it's a fairy tale until that one bad day at the end. And that's better than what we get, isn't it? Like we have as humans, like we make our own lives pretty miserable sometimes.
Agreed. I agree on all levels. Jacob, has been so fun chatting to you and hearing your story unfold, and the fact that you've got this entrepreneurial spirit behind what's kind of eventuating at the moment, and been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you and chatting to soil lovers. How can they hear more about you? How can they hang out with you more?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter at Jacob Wolki. Pretty new on Twitter. I'm having a bit of fun there. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. And if you go to wolkifarm.com.au, we're now shipping meat into Melbourne, and we're aiming to get to the middle of the year and start freighting to Canberra, Sydney and South Coast.
Awesome. And can they book a farm tour from the website? How do we get on?
We're currently got everything listed on Eventbrite, but that'll be data fed onto the website shortly. So I'm trying to do them monthly. They're booking out really fast, and I normally do them on the weekends, which sort of screws with family time, but I'm doing as many as I can.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a great thing. I think someone on a podcast recently asked me and said, what can families be doing differently? And I said, stop going to Disneyland and go on farm tours, and do the Disneyland afterwards if you really have to scratch that itch. But getting more and more people onto farms, seeing, how the systems work, touching the soil, smelling the different air, being inoculated in the, nature vibration, I think is just a much better fun day out for the weekend for the family. So
100%. And the long term, we're just going to keep talking for 2 hours. But I really think I'm really passionate about children and child rearing and like experiential learning. And when you think about all these kids sitting in apartments in the cities, and the only interaction they have with animals is Pepper the pig and Bluey the dog. So these animals that talk and walk and go to school and fly in spaceships. Like, no wonder we've got this widespread vegetarian, militant veganism mindset. The only thing they've ever seen with animals is that they walk and talk and fly spaceships, because they need to actually understand the true nature of these animals and the beauty of what they can do with us. We're co-laborers.
That's an interesting thought. I never thought of it like that, where they're humanizing these animals. So the empathy
100%.
Yeah, damn. Penny dropping right there. Thanks for sharing that. That's very interesting. Very interesting concept. Something I'm going to sit with tonight and ponder more, because that's when you make it look like a human, talk like a human, you might have different empathy for it. Interesting stuff. Well, there you go. So lovers, we've been hanging out with Jacob. All the links that he mentioned during that on how you can hang out and book a farm tour will be around the link. Jacob, if there's one thing that you want everyone to kind of like download into their head and you wish that everyone on the planet knew, what would that be? Let's leave them with this final thought.
We buy our future. So what you spend your money towards consciously is going to expand, and you're going to get the future you deserve.
Yeah. And I want to say also your attention, money and attention.
Of course.
Because you opened up with that as well. And I thought that was very powerful, that, you want people's attention on the farm. And so maybe sometimes it's not money, but it's spending time on the farm, which is attention. And that will also change your future. Well, there you go, soil lovers. Thanks, Jacob, for hanging out. It's been an absolute blast. And for everyone who's listening, make sure that you check out the websites and get more around the people, because, that whole power of association, you are kind of who you hang around with, and you also are what you ate. And if that's opened up a bit of a thought, go research that, because there's lots of people talking about that now, and there's even a book dedicated to it, and I'm trying to get them onto the podcast. So wish me luck on that. Well, thanks, Jacob. Thanks for sharing everything.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, thanks, soil lovers. Until next time, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into the wonderful world of soil. I'm Regener, and I'll see you on the next show. Wait, before you hit the skip button, if you're a soil lover and love listening to my podcast, then I want you to discover more by getting access to my Patreon, where I share behind the scenes and bonus content that doesn't always make the conversations on the podcast. So head over to secretsofthesoil.com/support, where for a very small fee, you get to hang out with me and other soil lovers, where we get to geek out about soil and get access to exclusive content. It's very exclusive. No, not really. It's just a lot of fun and a way that we get to support this podcast together in order so that we can have deeper conversations all about soil from mentors all around the world. So what are you waiting for? Go on, show your support and token appreciation for this podcast. Until next time. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty and keep digging deeper into your soils.